Hello Internet and welcome to Just Another Darwin. Today I'm going to be talking about one of the most feared predators in all the oceans, sharks. First off, what is a shark? Technically speaking, sharks are a type of fish, which means they live underwater. Except, unlike most other fish, they have a cartilaginous skeleton. And their fins are attached not to their heads, but to their torso. And they have between 5 and 7 gills on the sides of their heads. There are more than 440 different species of sharks, ranging from wobbegong sharks to whale sharks, hammerhead sharks, to great white sharks. They come in all sizes, shapes, and natural behaviours and colours. So surely it's bad that there are so many sharks, I hear you cry. However, sharks are in fact a really important species. A lot of the species of sharks are in fact keystone species. A keystone species is a species which is so important that without that species, the whole ecosystem would just go into utter chaos. As an apex predator, sharks keep the numbers of all the other organisms in check, which means that if there's a change in the number of sharks, that affects the whole ecosystem. So without them, or without the proper number of them, things would go badly. It's due to this role that sharks play that we have such a beautiful underwater ecosystem. An example of the importance of sharks was in Shark Bay in Australia, where they noticed that the sharks like to hunt in shallower areas where the seagrass also like to grow. This also happened to be the place where the turtles and the sea cows like grazing. But then a decline in the amount of tiger sharks meant that because the turtles and the sea cows, which are herbivores, so they ate the seagrass, that their numbers went up, which meant that the seagrass was disappearing. So this was a really big problem. This shows how the amount of sharks really affected the ecosystem, because if that had just continued, then all the seagrass would have gone, and in the end all of the turtles and all of the sea cows would have left in the end because there was no food. So these sharks, they're really important. So why am I talking about this? So sharks are facing a problem right now. The problem being humans. 100 million sharks die every year because of humans. This is because of bycatch, because of shark finning, because of trophy fishing, and because of hate crimes against sharks. This massive number, 100 million, can only really be compared to a mass genocide. If you think that there's about 10 million people living in London right now, that's 10 times the amount of people in London dying every year. And this is all across the oceans, everywhere. A particularly large proportion of this 100 million is from the shark fin trade, which I think pose the greatest threat to sharks. This involves fishermen going out and specifically fishing for big sharks, and when they've caught the sharks, they cut off the fins. And these fins are really, really important for sharks. They let the sharks swim. And after they've cut off the fins, they throw the still living shark back into the ocean. This means that this shark will not be able to swim. So it won't be able to catch its prey, it won't be able to swim away from other potentially bigger sharks. So in the end, these sharks will either drown, they'll starve to death, or most likely they will be eaten by other sharks that are attracted by the blood. Humans, although these direct causes are massive, they also indirectly kill sharks. Habitat degradation is a massive point for sharks, because sharks need shallower areas, they need estuaries, they need beaches for pupping grounds, because sharks give birth, a lot of sharks give birth to live young, which means that they need an area, like a nursery, for their children, for their pups to grow up. And all of these places are being colonized by humans, and if sharks will come to these beaches, then people will build up nets around the beaches, if they're swimming beaches, to keep sharks out, or they'll put chemicals in the water. And this means that the sharks will have nowhere for their pups to grow up, which is a huge problem, because that's the next generation. If there's no next generation, what will happen to the species? An example of this is in the USA, where by the mid-1970s, almost half of all the salt marshes and mangrove forests on the coasts had disappeared. And these were massively important areas for sharks to reproduce. This means that their population won't be able to continue. If so many individuals of their species are dying, then they can't bring that up by having lots of children, because they can only have so many. And if there's less sharks, for example, if there's less great white sharks in the sea, then the likelihood of a shark finding a mate is lower, and then the likelihood of it surviving long enough to give birth is also shorter. And the likelihood of this baby shark growing up is already slim, but it's slimmer if the nursing areas for these pups are all gone. Then the sharks have nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Sharks are also caught for trophy fishing because of the Jaws image of sharks. That sharks are this evil creature that must be exterminated. That groups of people go out and try and catch big sharks, like great white sharks for example, so that they can say, look at me, look at how amazing I am, I could bring down a great white shark. So why is this a problem for sharks? Charles Darwin, in his book On the Origin of Species, he wrote that all species possess the ability to overproduce. This means that they have more children that are required to keep the population stable. So surely sharks follow this as well, because this is a law that governs all species. Well, although this also applies to sharks, this is not so big for sharks, because sharks are an apex predator in most ecosystems, or they're a predator, which means that they don't produce so many young. So they produce up to 2 pups per year, for example, with some shark species. So despite all of this, surely sharks are bad. Well, in fact, sharks only kill between 7 and 10 people per year. Now, this seems not that big. If you consider the fact that the world has a population of over 7 billion people, I think 7 to 10 people per year is not that big. And if you compare it to other things, more people are killed every year by lightning, more people are killed every year by hippos, more people are killed every year by cows, by snails, by mosquitoes. There are so many more deadly things out there, yet we're so terrified of sharks. Although most shark species are in fact not dangerous to humans. There's actually very little sharks that are dangerous to humans. These lamniform sharks, which they include the short-fin mako shark, they include the basking shark, which isn't actually dangerous to humans. They include the great white shark, the iconic Jaws image shark. So although there's been more shark attacks, there's also been more people swimming, more people surfing. Surfing is becoming increasingly popular, and some scientists think that humans on surfboards look a lot like seals or like turtles, which are natural prey for sharks. So sharks go for them thinking that they're their prey. So if you think about how much good sharks do for the world, and up to 80% of all life on Earth is thought to be found in the water, surely sharks form a huge part of that, being such an iconic and well-known species that are so vital for so many ecosystems. If you think about all these beautiful places underwater, like the Great Barrier Reef, like the Galapagos Islands, they're all beautiful to look at underwater. And one of the reasons why they're so beautiful to look at underwater is because sharks are keeping them in control. They're keeping the amount of fish there under control, which means that they keep all of this looking so nice. They get rid of all the dead carcasses. They're so vital that we should not hate sharks. We should not really be scared of sharks because they don't pose such a great threat to us. Which is why for example, I love sharks. I think they're amazing. They're beautiful and they're so important. I guess what I'm saying is that from this video, if you take anything, I want you to take that sharks are not that scary, that you shouldn't think about the media's image of sharks, and you should like sharks for what they are. Just another beautiful fish in the sea. Thank you very much for watching my video. If you like this video, click the like button or subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment, or I'll leave my email address in the description.